What's going on? I am about to start a pretty exciting journey in the Red Eye Garage. We are going to be reassembling the Swamp Thing engine. You've seen some shorts and reels about this is the engine we pulled from the mud when I got the Willys pickup, and it turned out to be a 1943 block with an unknown history, so it's a very early like MB era block, chain driven, and the insides didn't look too bad, but this big box down here is an order from Kaiser Willys that has all the parts we need to get this thing running again. So the next few videos are going to be about this engine. Every one of the parts you're going to see me use in this video are from Kaiser Willys, so be sure to use my code RedEyeGarage10 whenever you order parts from them. It works on everything and it doesn't expire. If you follow the journey of this engine on Instagram or TikTok, you saw it had it had a dead mouse in the oil pan. It had water about halfway up the block, and it was just a mess. It was thrown in the mud, and the bell housing plate was bent, the distributor shaft was bent, the carburetor was snapped off, the front pulley was smashed, but everything inside was good. It didn't bend the crank. The head looked good, so there's hope. We are going to rebuild this thing. It had standard bores. The rods were 30,000th undersized. The mains were 20, but everything looked good. It did have a spun bearing on number 4. We cleaned up the crank and we're putting new bearings in. I'm replacing the number 4 rod just in case, because it looked like it got a little warm. So I have a big box of new parts right there, and an even bigger box of old parts right there. Anytime I can use used parts that I have here, original Willys parts, I always try to. Can't always do that with everything. Obviously rings, bearings, pistons, things like that. Eventually you have to get new ones, so that's where Kaiser comes in. They have a lot of cool new old stock parts, so the connecting rod I'm going to use to replace the one that got hot is a new old stock Willys rod. So they have an ever-growing collection of new old stock parts, and original Willys parts. So that stuff, in my opinion, has been the best. So anytime you can do that, I highly recommend it. As you can tell, this block is pretty well stripped down. The only thing that's really left to do to it, I need to pull the end plugs and flush the oil galley. I'm going to pull the intake and exhaust studs. I like to chase all the threads and seal everything and anti-seize everything that can be, but the real chore we have left to do is to remove the valve guides. So that can be a little bit of a chore on these, especially you can see this rust in the intake. This thing had water in it. It sat outside for who knows how long. So these guides are probably pretty well stuck in there. We don't care if they break, but we do not want to damage the block. So that's tonight's task. Get the old guides out. I have the depth mic on here, just checking them. Everyone gets pretty fussy over the tolerances and how these things are put together. I'm sure this engine's been worked on. I don't know if the original guides or not, but just look at the measurements on all the guides. So if you'll notice, the exhaust and intake are different, but they should all be the same, and it looks like someone just kind of hammered them in there, and they're close enough. So whether that was at the factory or not, I mean, some of them vary by almost 1/4 of an inch. So one funny factoid, I used to make and sell valve guide removal kits for these engines. It consisted of just like a heavy-duty threaded rod and kind of a steel puck that you would put on here to extract the old guides, and then a special driver to drive the new ones in. And now I haven't made them in years, and I get tons of people still emailing me asking for them, and I don't make them anymore. I have not worked on L heads, well, since I did the TDI swap, because why would I when I have a diesel? But now I'm getting back into the L heads, and I find myself without a valve guide removal and installation tool. So I'm not going to make my whole little kit again. I'll show you what I'm going to do. It's really a pretty simple procedure, and if you take your time, you can do it with stuff you just have laying around, provided these things aren't rusted in here so bad. I'm a little scared to touch them because, yeah, it would run with the you know, the original valve guides in there. If you look down the hole, they're actually kind of oval shaped, and if you put a valve in there, there's a lot of slop. So this is going to be a smoky engine if I put it back together like this. And I'm putting brand new valves in, and they're going to move around and not seat correctly and cause premature wear. So we're not doing everything exactly 100% right, but there's certain things where you don't want to cut corners. So long story short, once I start removing these, I got to get them all out, and I really don't want to damage the block. I can see they're pretty well rusted in there. You know, wherever the valves were open, it seemed it got moisture in there, and I mean, these were completely full of rust. It looks good now, but trust me, there was a lot of corrosion in here, so I'm a little worried they're not going to come out very easily, but gotta try. So let's see what happens. First one was a success. So even as rusty as these were, I don't know if you can see, once you get it to move just a little bit, it's such a tight fit that the moisture didn't really get down in there. So this is the setup I'm using. This is the highest grade fine thread 3/8 round stock I could get from McMaster Car, and I'm using some steel discs to help just with spacing. And then this is a 4 or 5 inch piece of steel that's bored out. The bigger the better, because it spreads the load, and it has to be bored out a little bit to let the guide come up all the way out of the block. I'll try to record removing one. It does take a while. It probably took me 10 minutes to get that one out, because you want to work slow, and the rod often doesn't do the entire job by itself. So what I do is I put pressure on it. I'm using fine thread and a high grade, so you can put quite a bit of pressure on it, but get it holding pressure. And then if your engine's disassembled like mine, you just come up from the bottom with a brass drift, and I didn't even have to hit it that hard. When there's pressure on it and you start tapping the bottom of it, you'll see it just pop. And then once you get it to move a little bit, then it's just steady pressure. You can tap it a little bit more, and then you'll get eventually to where you could either put a slide hammer on it or just keep tapping it up through the bottom. So pressure with the rod, tap with brass from the bottom. Be careful, the lifter bores, you don't want to scratch them up or ding them up. So this isn't like a, you know, bang 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 thing. It's just a tap, and use brass on any machined surface, and that will protect the end of your threaded rod as well. It's going pretty well. We're on to number 3, so I'm gonna show you on this one what I do. So there's the big hunk of steel, and this is just a spacer to fill up that larger hole and to take up some of the distance on this long threaded rod. So I like to use 2 nuts on the top and on the bottom, so you can tighten them into each other, because the threaded rod tends to want to just spin, and you can't weld the nut on the bottom because you have to be able to, this is how you assemble it. So that's why we do that. I like to keep some oil on the threads and the nuts on top, but on the bottom keep it dry. Then come down here and snug this up. So you'll need to hold a wrench on the bottom. I usually put the closed end over there and let it come around and hit the block, and then do the old double wrench method to get a little extra power. You want to watch, if the threaded rod is spinning, you're not doing anything. So if it spins, then you need to come down here and tighten those nuts up. So we're just putting some pressure on here. With this extra wrench, you're actually able to apply quite a bit of force. So remember, we're not going to do all the work with the threaded rod because it will bend and snap. Now I'm going to come up from the bottom with my drift, and we have pressure on. We're going to give it a little whack. It's a little slow at first, but you know, this is something you don't really want to rush. So now hopefully we gain some, yeah, see now it's turning much easier. So that tells me it moved. Put about the same amount of pressure back on it. All right, line it up good, whack it again. Come back up. Eventually it'll get to where you can do the whole thing with the threaded rod, but I have 5 more to go after this. This threaded rod was 20 bucks after shipping from McMaster-Carr, because I think it's like grade 10 or something. It makes all the difference. If you try with hardware store threaded rod, you'll get nowhere. All right, time for another whack. Oh yeah, saw some movement. All right, so I'm gonna stop the camera here because this is taking a while, but you get the idea. I'll show you once it loosens up a little more. I think we're almost through. There we go. Voila, great success. So there's a valve guide. Well, that is all, folks. All 8 of them came out. So this is all ready to clean and prep. So we'll use like a shotgun brush, clean all those out, try to get rid of all the carbon. We gotta hone it, cut the ridge, hone, and cut new valve seats. Put the new valves in, lap them. There's lots to do. Here's all the old guides. Pretty cool design. You know, it's basically like 4 mini bike engines stacked. These old flatheads are pretty cool. So next video, bust out the shiny new parts from Kaiser. I still have a ton of cleaning to do. All my springs and keepers and adjusters are in there, and got to finish polishing the crank and get everything ready. These engines are super simple. Once everything's cleaned and prepped, couple hours, and it will be together, provided nothing goes wrong. But looks great, is ready to roll. Thanks for following along. Make sure to use my code RedEyeGarage10 when you order parts to put your engine back together. It's like 1:30 in the morning here. Red Eye Garage. I'm pooped. Time to get cleaned up and shut her down for the night. Catch you later.